All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for episode 4 of Changemakers. We got a really special guest. We've got Chad Prda is going to be with us today. We, of course, have Cashley Kelly. We're both kind of in the back right now. Cash, you there? Can we hear you?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Mic check 1 2 1 2. I know a lot of people are probably
20.
We are somehow on time right now. So I guess people are probably going to be very confused that we're starting already. But yeah, we are here. We are ready to go. We are excited. We actually have a candidate for Dallas County Sheriff. Kind of a big deal. And I know this isn't typically a political show, but this one is going to be talking not really about politics, but about a little bit about policing. It's going to be talking about family. It's going to be talking about why it's important that somebody like Chad reaches the sheriff level position. A lot of people don't know about the difference between different police departments and offices and what the sheriff department mean and all that stuff. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about community policing, fresh start program, police reform, and of course, Mr. Prda's background as well as a detective, a lot of different things, SWAT, sniper. He's pretty gifted in the whole police world. But we're going to go and get started in less than a minute. Go ahead and share this out there. Again, super important video. Love to have you guys out. For those of you following from his campaign, welcome to Be the Change. Thanks again. We're going to go and get started in about 10 seconds. Let's go. Cash, how many cheesy things can we put before one show? What do you think?
No, I was just thinking that as it was going on, like this cornball. Stupid cornball.
But it flows of positivity. You know what I mean? We got a lot of people joining us right now. Cash, what's going on in your world? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Went and worked out today. I had to get off some of this energy that I got because of last night. And yeah, I've been getting blown up with messages, having to defend things and stuff. We'll leave that there, though. I think I did a pretty good job of it. I really did. Whatever. I'm over it.
I just crawled in a hole, snuggled my dog, and said, let's move on. And you know what? I made sure to wear my Be the Change gear. Speaking of that, if anybody would like to know where we get this cool stuff, Cash, you actually are like a day away from getting your mug, I believe.
I can't wait. But I'm more interested in the shirts and the sweaters.
Oh, you're going to get all that stuff. Well, not the
sweaters. Cool. Well, then the mug is great then.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to give these a look, just go to #BeTheChange.com and shop. Fantastic.
Yeah. And enter in the hashtag code Chinese virus.
No, that's not us.
20% off.
Nope, that's not us. That's
call it the Chinese virus because it's from China.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's not us. That's not us, Cash.
Shout out to the Hodge twins. Get a hold of me, guys. Have your people call my people. Let's do this.
All right. So last little bit of news. Well, two things. We've got the Streetlights groups up. I did a post on the Streetlights page. Cash, I've got a teed up post for you to put on your personal page that people can start joining. 20 of the 50 across the country are open right now for you guys to, again, be the change you wish to see in the world and be a streetlight that lights up your community. Secondly, tonight is my first Q&A session for my Patreon followers. So we look forward to having you guys. If you see on the bottom of the screen, if you want to join, anybody that joins, no matter what level, even the $5 level, will get to go on this tonight's Q&A, and we're going to hang out. We're going to have a good time, answer any questions you have. We're just going to chat for an hour and a half and see what that is. And any support I get, thank you guys so much for it. Because, again, doing all this stuff, not cheap, but it is fun, because I get to hang out with Cash all the time. And, again,
that's true.
Being on time is absolutely just, to me, you're speaking my love language right now, Cash. I want you to know that by being on time.
You know what? You got lucky. All right. Well, you got lucky. Thanks to you having me play that drinking game, I'm going to be on time all day today.
All right. Well, I know we only have you for a couple minutes, so we are going to introduce our guest, which we are super excited to have. A gentleman that I met actually through a random LinkedIn call with, I think, his mother-in-law. I don't even know. I think I'm getting a little echo, Cash. It looks like a couple people said it. Would you?
I don't hear you.
That means that it's coming on your end. Just be a little careful with maybe you're near the speaker. I don't know.
No, I'm not, but I'll turn it down a little bit.
Check.
Yeah.
I don't hear you.
I got my volume up to like 10.
Okay, I think we're good. We're all right. All right. So this gentleman I met, we got introduced, started talking on the phone. I started hearing his kind of belief on politics, as well as what he feels about policing, because that's been his life. And now he's actually running for Dallas County Sheriff, which is actually a very big deal. It's the only elected position in the police department, which I didn't know until the first time we talked. And I really think I know a lot, and I didn't know that. But we're going to introduce him. He's a former detective, Chad Prda, dedicated father of 2 boys, 2 girls, and a husband to Jamie. Strives to be an example, role model to his children, teaching them the importance of honor, integrity, faith, and most of all, being honest and true to yourself. Can't be any better for a message for 2020. He attended the Desoto Fire Academy. He was on the way to being a firefighter and EMT certification, but then he found his calling in law enforcement, quickly rose through the ranks, and then now is I'll let him tell his backstory, but he's had a lot happen to him to lead him to this point. I'm rocking the hat, rocking the wristband. Ladies and gentlemen, Chad Prda.
Howdy.
What's going on?
Full-fledged cowboy right there, y'all.
Yeah,
I like him.
Where's that? Where's the this hat? I wanted to say. I thought you were going to show up in the hat.
No, I'm in the house, in the computer room.
when him and I actually met in person, the last thing I saw of him was no beard, and he was just a clean cut dude. And him and I were actually, when we had our first meeting, in the same room for a solid like 5 minutes until we actually realized it was quite funny, quite entertaining. So yeah, go ahead, Cash.
I got a question for you. First off, I want you to let the people know a little bit about yourself, and then I want to know more about community policing.
Okay.
That's what I want to know.
So the quick down and dirty with me on myself, 4 children, love my wife. She's a very tolerant and understanding woman. They're wholehearted involved in the campaign with me. My wife is my campaign manager. We do everything together. So family to me comes first. Law enforcement side, I have 17 years in law enforcement. 8 of those years I spent on the S.W.A.T team, where I became lead sniper and firearm instructor. In fact, multiple agencies in Dallas County are using the techniques that I developed for breaching and building clearing to this day.
Nice.
I still teach in that field. Moved into being a detective, and as a detective, I specialize in child crimes and homicide. So I got the worst of the worst. And when dealing with child crimes, the average career expectancy is 2 years. I was there for 4.5 years. It's just something I'm good at. Because of my technical background, I can find predators and I can track on the internet a lot better than most of the other detectives. So I excelled in that field to the point of becoming Dallas County's only mobile forensic expert. I testify in criminal court cases, and being an expert gives me the ability to not only testify to cases that I work, but other officers' cases. I can come in and give my opinion in open court, which is something that most people can't do. You're not allowed to do that. You have to state the facts as the officer. But because of my knowledge of the field, I'm able to come in and actually give an opinion. And what that lets me do is testify to say what was happening with the phone. Why did they do that? Why did the phone do this behavior? And it's really lent itself to winning a lot of child-related cases. Most of my cases did not go to court. That's amazing. Most of them pled out. They didn't even want to try court.
So before you keep going, you guys hear this, right? So with everything that's going on today with the whole human trafficking and, the sick people, I'm going to call them the Hollywood people. I'm going to call them that. This man directly affects the change in that. All right. He helps specifically. He's like a superhero. So if you're in Texas, then yeah, I need you guys to really tune in and listen and share this. Go ahead. My bad.
Oh, no, feel free to jump in. I'm settling into the politician role, so I'm kind of having to learn how to talk for long, extended periods of time where everybody's just staring at me. One of the things I ran on is I'm not a politician. I've told many people I'd rather be getting shot at than dealing with politics. On the street, I knew what the game was. We knew the rules. We knew who the players were. In politics, it's terrifying. You can't even trust your own party in some instances. And I've had to leave, party meetings with devout Republicans and say, you know what, I don't even want to get involved with you, and just walk away. Because, like I said, in law enforcement, we knew which side we stood on. Politics, it's swimming with sharks. And so I'm learning how to do it. But the big thing I say is, across the board, we need to stop electing politicians. Let's put a cop in a sheriff's position. Let's put a businessman in Congress. Let's stop electing that person that smiles good and talks good. Let's elect people that can do that.
No more Obamas. I feel you.
He's trying to stay bipartisan right now, Cash.
I get it. I understand. This is my personal opinion. He is definitely different than me, and I understand that. But I believe in you, so I'm just saying that's just my personal opinion. I like you. I think you're dope. I think you're gonna win by landslide, kind of like someone else that I know. But we're not gonna say it because bipartisan. I get it.
So, Cash, before you go, in terms of the community policing, and Chad, we can go back more on your background too. But while we still have Cash obviously grew up, and I don't know if you know too much about his background. I don't know how much you and I talked about it, but Cash's background's interesting. Bad part of northern Indiana, lower Chicago area. And he actually still has a very good thought on the police. How important is community policing to somebody like you and in the Dallas area, which would affect somebody, again, I know not in Indiana because you're local, but how does that affect the community?
It is probably the single most important thing that's going to happen in 2020. A lot of law enforcement agencies in 2008, when I went through the academy, they talked about community policing. And it's always been this buzzword and catchphrase that's used, but then law enforcement doesn't actually utilize it. The concepts are foreign to law enforcement, and they should be, because honestly, a street cop should be worried about criminals, not law-abiding citizens. But we have to bridge that gap. And so community policing is probably the most important and life-changing thing that will happen to anybody in this election. If we can get true community policing, not just the political buzzwords. I don't want to have just an officer walking the street and doing a beat. And in law enforcement, that's what they think community policing is. When you're actually walking and interacting with people, much like you see in Chicago and New York, where you have your beat that you walk. Well, in Texas, it's a little hard. It's 45 minutes to the next neighbor in some places in Texas. And so just walking downtown Dallas won't do it. What I think we need to do with community policing is invite the community into the jails, into the police departments. Now, I don't want to see community oversight. There's no other, profession that will say we need to have normal average citizens now be completely oversight. I want to see an oversight board, but not made up of individual citizens, made up of professionals from other departments, other agencies, the community, much like we do with medical and law and lawyers. I want to see the bar in law enforcement. And so we do need oversight, but we need to bring those communities in. Why don't we have community resource centers, even faith-based programs to bring in jobs, bring those into the jail, bring them into the department. That way your community understands why your department does what it does, and you can better reach those individuals in the community that needs it. An officer, you stick me on the street and just walk, I can't reach everybody. But if I bring that community into the department, reach a lot more people.
That is important. I like that a lot, actually. That makes a whole lot of sense. This is why I like him, guys. He's going to keep making sense throughout the show. And unfortunately, I won't be here for it. I have to go. Had something else, prior engagement. I just wanted to come out here to meet you, man, and tell you that you got my support. And if I was in Texas, I'd be right there with you, bro. I think you're going to do amazing things. I'm praying for you. Good luck with everything, man. Keep doing what you're doing, all right? You're a superhero as far as I'm concerned. Thank you for your service.
I will see you soon.
All right, brother.
Later, Cash.
Peace out, Anthony.
Take it easy, Cash. So here's the cool thing. So that's actually going to lead into my next question, because with Cash, I mean, we are hoping and praying that you do well in this election. And of course, being able to be a part of some of the programs you've got in Texas. Since I'm based in Dallas, that's how you and I met. So when we're looking at some of your concepts, like the Fresh Start program, love to know more about that. And again, that's something that when you talked to me about, I was super excited and was like, all right, this would be perfect for Cash and I to see if we can get involved once you get to this point in office. So what is the Fresh Start program and how do you believe it can help?
So Fresh Start program is not my brainchild. I didn't just come up with that. That is working with the sheriff in Arizona, Sheriff Mark Lamb. I talked to him, and he has this program that I want to bring to Texas. I want to adapt it and bring it here to Dallas County. What it will allow for, and I'll use the example of theft. Someone steals $1,200. And I use the example of theft because right now, the district attorney will not prosecute theft at a basic level. They're just releasing the individual back out onto the streets. And so I'll take theft of $1,200. And say an individual has several felonies in their past, they're caught up on drugs and they can't get off of them. You take a case like theft, and rather than just not prosecute where that charge still goes on the person's record, you take that individual and you put them in this Fresh Start program. And what Fresh Start program does is it's a 6-month program. They have to come in or stay in the jail. That's their choice. They can use it as bond and get out on a personal recognizance bond. Or if they say, you know what, I just can't get off of the drugs, but I really need help, they can stay in the jail. That's their decision to use it as their bond or not. But they come in for an 8-hour class once a month. And during that class, we're going to teach them where the programs are that will give them suit and tie for job interviews, how to fill out a job application, how to act in a job, professional setting, how to dress, basic life skills that a lot of people don't get. And then we're going to tweak their job application. We're going to allow them to bring it in, and we're going to sit down with them and show them, hey, no, change the wording on this to really help them get a job. The last day, they will be exposed to many jobs in the area. Right now, there's 2 restaurants downtown that offer a second chance, but they cater to felons coming out of prison. They give them a job and they teach them how to be a chef. So I'm going to bring those two kitchens in. I'm also going to bring in auto body shops, electrical trade skill shops, welding, anything that is a skill-based job that they can go under an apprenticeship to learn. They can put in for it and they take that job. Now, that job will go to a percentage of their check, will pay back what they stole. Once they've paid that back and everyone is made whole, the case is never filed. It's taken off. So it's never held against them. It's never put on their record. And they're given a skill set to get out of poverty. If we do what the program right now is just releasing them, we never give anybody the skill set to come out of poverty. And so right now, that second chance program will give them the ability to pay for their families, to provide for them, and to get out of poverty. It'll also give them the ability to get off of whatever drugs they're on. And I'm not talking about just minimizing this to a specific misdemeanor class. I am talking about opening this up to everyone and handle it on a case-by-case basis. I would not put someone that's been convicted of rape in this program, but I would put a habitual drug user in this program because the system's obviously failed them. They can't get off of the drugs. Let's try this program. Let's try it. Let's do something.
So you're going to get, so obviously there's a lot of people saying, great idea. I love that idea. We need that in our communities. And then you're going to get this. This is just part of life. You're going to get somebody saying, good luck. And I'm going to assume that it's the negative good luck of like, yeah, good luck. Nice try. I don't know how you're going to get that to work. So how would you answer a question like that? How do you answer the, good luck? What's your faith-based concept on that?
So and I get a lot of pushback for it. Mainly just, there's a lot of, I call them keyboard warriors. Everybody wants to talk trash on the internet. My general response to that is if we do nothing, nothing changes. But if we try and we fail, then we can continue to work and try. But if you do nothing, nothing changes. So if I do this program and say I do it for 4 years and I reach 5 people in that 4 years, well, there's 5 people that would have been in prison that are now no longer there. So it worked.
Yeah.
You have to try. You have to do something. And what we're trying in law enforcement and criminal justice is not working. We know that. We know it is not working. The moment we privatize prison systems, we set ourselves up for failure. So we have to try something to, I guess, combat the recidivism rate. We have got to start doing something. And at the county level, we have the opportunity to. So let's do it.
And again, that's going to take us into the next question, which is obviously a hot topic as a country, not just in Texas. And Texas is a hot spot for, again, some issues with police. And, before we do that, explain how the sheriff's department works. Give the hierarchy, almost like the way it breaks down, who communicates to who, how's the sheriff work with Dallas PD, city PDs, et cetera. How does the hierarchy work?
Okay. So I'll jump into that, but I see a comment that I do want to address. I don't think I addressed it well enough. The comment is, where would the line be drawn? What about domestic violence or repeat offenders? And like I said, if it's a domestic violence, no, you're not getting out. My first mission is to the victim. The victim of a crime has to be made whole. And so the victims will always be protected. That's why I use the example of theft. Now, if it's a repeat offender, it depends on the crime. A repeat aggravated or aggressive crime, no, they're not in the program. A repeat drug offender, theft, something along those lines, then yeah, they'll be considered for the program, but we'll have to look at it case by case. You have 50 manufacturing and delivering charges, you're probably not going to be considered. But you have 50 usage charges, you'll probably be considered. It really will be a case by case, and the victim will always be put first. If the victim says, no, I don't want them in there, then they're not going to be allowed in there. It really will case by case.
Got it.
Now,
that makes sense.
So what was your question?
Explain the hierarchy of the police department, the sheriff department, and how they work together. Because again, I didn't know that, and I think I know a lot.
Many people don't understand the authority of the sheriff's department. And what it comes down to is you have municipal police, and those are going to be your city police. So if you live in a city like Dallas, your municipal police department is Dallas Police Department. If you live within Dallas, though, you are within Dallas County. So your sheriff is the Dallas County Sheriff. Within Dallas County, there's 31 cities. All of those cities have their own municipal police departments. Dallas, Balch Springs, Rowlett, DeSoto, Duncanville, they all have their own police department. Those agencies are responsible for their jurisdiction of their city. Dallas County Sheriff is responsible for unincorporated areas and jail and serving warrants. And then they offer backup to the municipal cities within their jurisdiction. So our PES guys, our crime scene CSI, those guys will go to Mesquite, DeSoto, Duncanville. They do a lot of that because those agencies are a little bit smaller and they don't have the technology that we have. So they go assist with them. As a detective, I worked many cases for other agencies. I worked the Balch Springs shooting. I worked the DeSoto shooting. And what we'll do for transparency is we will come in and work these cases where an officer is involved in lethal fire, and we will do the investigation to make sure there is a transparency and there is no favoritism shown. So we offer support to smaller agencies, but ultimately the sheriff doesn't respond or doesn't report to anyone. Whereas DPD is in the middle of a defund battle with the city mayor and the city council. They are guided by politics effectively. So whatever political movement's going on over there affects that department. The sheriff's department answers solely to the citizens. The only person you answer to as sheriff is your voters. Therefore, the sheriff is there to be the gatekeeper between the government and the general population. They should be able to.
That would make the sheriff one of the most, some people don't vote for everything on a ballot. They vote for the president, sometimes the senator, and they move on. But really, if they want to, the ones that affect their daily life almost the most, you're looking at the sheriff is up there on that list.
The sheriff's department is the singular most important vote you're going to cast that will affect your day-to-day life. Now, it's not more important on a legislative level than your congressman in your house, but your day-to-day life, the sheriff affects it. Regardless of your stance on Dallas and the mask issue. When Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins implemented his court orders, the sheriff could have opposed or helped them. It goes to that level. When Greg Abbott implemented his mask mandate, the sheriff can oppose or help that, meaning the sheriff could stop a governor's orders. The sheriff could stop a presidential order. We've seen it in New York. So New Jersey City passed an ordinance on firearms, and it was specific guns with specific ammo capacities. But the sheriff stepped in and said, no, you can pass it, but we won't follow it. Well, they passed it, and the sheriff said, no. And so now that ordinance cannot be enforced. The sheriff is the single most important race that you're going to find that will affect your day-to-day life. If you have a sheriff in there that is silent and doesn't do anything, you'll start to see that there is no check and balance in the system. Your politicians can just do whatever they want, and there will be no check to it. We're seeing that here in Dallas right now. We've had riots and protests, and on one night, a DPD squad car was literally burning in the streets. I was there, but our sheriff wasn't. And when DPD was asking for help, our sheriff said no. That's a silent sheriff versus someone who will step in and actually walk those streets. I go walk the protest right now. There's a protest every night downtown, and I'm there with them because the sheriff has that ability to walk alongside those protesters and say, you can protest or we're going to shut this down. And that's the problem that we have right now. We have a law enforcement that is too silent, that is not involved in the community, that is not actually taking their job to the streets. And we've got to change it. Now, real quick, Nicole was asking, do you think pedos can be reformed? So I was going to leave that
one. That's a hard question.
No, it's not. It's truly not. No, they can't. But a true predator is different than some of the people on the registration list. There are people on that registration list right now that should not be there. They were caught up in a legal system that just it was taken advantage of. And one of the examples I give is there's a 17-year-old, he was 17. He's 23 or 24 now. He was placed on that list the day he turned 18 because his girlfriend was 16. They went to the same high school.
Right.
Daddy got mad. The day he turned 18, Daddy walked in and had charges filed. Now that law has been changed since then to protect if, within an age discrepancy of that distance of up to 5 years. And it also protects in the same school, but that kid is still registering. He will forever be known. Now, a predator, a true adult that is going after a child, they're wired differently than anybody else. Right. A pedophile is someone that looks for prepubescent, generally boys. It's a psychological termination that we use. Pedo is used completely wrong in many cases. But if we try to rewire the brain, it doesn't happen. We've seen in studies that they tried to sterilize predators, and that doesn't work. We've also seen, we know if we say it's going to be a death penalty, that they will end up killing the victims rather than letting them live because they want to avoid the death penalty. So I don't know what the fix for it is, but I know right now you cannot take a true predator and reform them. They're just wired that way. When I look at my wife, I think she is beautiful. A true predator, when they look at a child, they look at them the same way. And you cannot undo that.
Yeah. Interesting. Nicole's got an interesting backstory. She's actually one of our regular watchers. So she shared some stuff with us. She hasn't shared that. So again, that's one of those, it's good to hear your feedback on that. And that's, I didn't want to see that one. I assume what the answer was, but I don't know if that's one of those ones you just answer. So I appreciate you for doing that.
That's a difficult one, and I won't answer that in written communication. Like if someone sends that on a post, because as you can see, the answer is too long.
Yeah,
there's little nuances. Like she said, you can be put on that list for peeing in public.
Yeah.
And so that person can be reformed. That's a frat guy that made a mistake.
Yeah.
And so the answer is just too long to just.
No, that's every frat guy. Just that's the one that got caught.
Yeah. And that, it's a hard one to answer, but I have a background in it. So I would love to talk to Nicole. If she wants to reach out, I'll talk to her in person about my feelings on it and where we should go with it.
Yeah. Now I remember her backstory. Yeah, I'll set you guys definitely up. Nicole's actually going to be on my Zoom tonight. So you and I remind me tonight, Nicole, to set you guys up at least with the email or something along those lines. So I want to go back because the whole purpose of the show, and I didn't do the proper intro in the beginning, is people that create change. We have ripple effects in the world, and some people have the ability to create bigger ripples from the start, but everybody has the opportunity to create change, and those ripples start smaller for some than others. If you get into the position that you're getting into, and also the career that you've already led into this point, your opportunity to create change and help people's lives is greater than most. And then with that comes obviously great responsibility. So let's go back into your background, why it was important to you to run for sheriff. And I know right now you're currently, quote unquote, besides campaigning, out of work or doing private security, correct?
Yes.
So take us the amount of whatever the amount that you want to tell us about leading up to this point. What caused you to go, I need to create change in the city of Dallas or in the county of Dallas County?
So my law enforcement career it began in SWAT. I graduated the police academy as valedictorian, so I got to pick where I went. And I was in my way early 20s. I'm going to go SWAT. That's the cool place to go. So I spent 8 years in SWAT doing that. So I have a very aggressive tactical background in law enforcement. I got lots of schools in that. I was firearm instructor. I'm a master firearm instructor with ILEFI. And, sniper, I've taught SWAT schools. I really went all into it. And what I learned is sometimes aggression isn't the answer. That we take a operational unit like SWAT, and that should be a scalpel. That should be very precise, very direct, and very limited use. They should not be used the way we were. We were running 7 days a week. I mean, for a 2 year point of time, I was running 7 days a week and 10, 12-hour days. We were overused. What I want to see from having been involved in that is I want to see a less reliance on the SWAT guys, put them for bad guys. SWAT goes after criminals. General public should be interacted with people that look like something out of Mayberry. Because in general, when you're stopping somebody for a traffic stop, you don't need a tactical response.
Right.
But what I found, I was involved in Dixon Circle riots. I was involved with every major riot from 2008 up until last year. And what I found is a lot of times we could limit the violence by just working with the community. Now, when I started really getting involved in politics, it was 2012. I realized we'd been through a pay freeze for about a decade. It was about a 10-year pay freeze where they didn't give anybody raises in the Dallas Sheriff's Department. And then in 2012, we pushed it. I started that fight up until 2018 where we won. They unfroze, and they are actually using the pay scale that I put in place. What we found was law enforcement was 40% above what they were paying sheriff's employees. So we were 40% behind the national average, along with having a pay freeze for a decade. So I started working with the then sheriff and the commissioners, and I found real quick that they didn't want to listen. So I went outside of that. We started a Facebook push. I went and I spoke out publicly in commissioner's court. And in 2018, we won. They're using the pay scale I submitted, and we got fair pay for the employees. Now, I quickly realized that was the most I was going to be able to do. I wouldn't be able to stop it from happening again. I wouldn't be able to make sure, regardless of race, color, sex, or political connections, you were paid the rate you should be paid in this department, because I wasn't sheriff. I couldn't do it as a deputy. And then I started looking at what we were doing. The Dallas Five, those 5 officers that gave their life on that day. I realized the sheriff's department needed a bigger stance. Now, I was in Florida at the time of the Dallas 5 shooting, and my lieutenant was actively arranging for a flight to bring me back because I was the counter sniper. But they found another outcome for that. My hang up with that is the sheriff's department wasn't actively involved. We didn't step up and be big brother. When DPD recently had to bring in the troopers, the sheriff's department refused to help. To me, that's a slap in the face. The sheriff should have been the one walking those communities and doing those traffic stops. Obviously, the community didn't want the troopers there. Some of them did, some of them didn't. But it would have been a lot better if it would have been sheriff's department from that community helping Dallas rather than having to reach out to the state police. And so just throughout my career, all this stuff has happened. And it was finally the revelation of, if I don't step up and do something, then I have to leave, because I can't sit back and gripe about it and say we should be doing something different, and I don't actually try. So I sat down with my wife and we talked about it and said, all right, we'll try it. We're going to put a deputy and we're going to run for sheriff, because I cannot do the things that I want to do to make the changes that need to be made in law enforcement as a deputy, but I can as a sheriff. So we decided to throw that hat on and try it. And the response has been great. The community response for not wanting for a non-politician to say, you know what, let's try something better, seems to work out pretty well.
It's awesome. Real quick, and that you actually led right into police reform. We'll get there. Really quick question, and then I'm going to talk about the Dallas 5, and then we'll go to police reform. What's the difference between a sheriff and a deputy? I've always heard sheriff deputy together.
So the sheriff is the elected official. That is most people think of sheriff as chief. Sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer in the county. A deputy is a person that swears to uphold the law under me and follow my orders. So I was a deputy sheriff up until I decided the sheriff wasn't upholding her oath. And then I was terminated for running for office.
So is there a difference? So there's a sheriff deputy and a deputy sheriff, 2 different things.
Yeah. No. So sheriff's deputy or a deputy sheriff is the exact same thing. It's just when I talk about them, they're my sheriff's deputies.
Got it.
Or a deputy, I'm a deputy sheriff. And so that it's just the I guess the context of the sentence, but they're the same thing.
How big so you've got the sheriff and then the deputy. How many sheriff deputies are there? Is there any other levels? Is there just like Elmer Fudd's? I don't know. What's the how many actually work, for example, in Dallas County? So
Dallas County has a little over 2,000 employees, but around 300 sworn deputy sheriffs. Underneath there's also captains, chiefs, lieutenants, sergeants, detectives, all different ranks, but they're all considered deputy sheriffs.
Got it.
And then you may be a deputy sheriff that your rank is captain, but you're still my deputy.
That makes sense.
That's the big difference between a municipality also. Municipalities, if you have a chief of police like Renee Hall, her captains, that's their position as a captain. And as a sheriff, you have the sheriff and everybody else is sworn in under you. Got it. Okay. So that actually, now I'm going to say it is another question. So Renee Hall put in her papers, obviously. I think we know that in the city of Dallas. What does that mean now come election time and the important, like what kind of relationship will the sheriff's office have with the city of Dallas while the city of Dallas is now, they have not found a successor yet, have they? They haven't named a successor, but I got a feeling they already have people in the running. You don't have something that big change and you don't have an idea it's coming. Got it. Okay. All right. Okay. So for those of you watching that are from Dallas, and I've seen a couple people post that they are, Be the Change, if you didn't know, actually started because of
the Dallas 5 shooting. And Chad and I talked about this very briefly the first time we talked. It was that moment in 2016. I lived south side of Dallas. I was actually directly across from the police department. And I saw everything that went on in that day. And I was in and out, and I was like, this is insane. And I started looking at things. And part of the reason I wanted to create change is I realized that we as a country, and we as a city in this case, yell at the top of our lungs for change. It was a group of people protesting against police. The police were protecting their own protesters against them, and 5 police officers were shot. And it was that moment that actually was the matchstick in my brain that was like, okay, I need to do something bigger with my life to create that kind of change. I saw the door of like creak. I was like, oh, that's getting creepy.
My dog.
No, you're all good. That's why. So that's why we started actually Be the Change. Interestingly enough, and with that, as much as we are police supporters, police isn't perfect. Police aren't perfect. Police officers aren't perfect. They're human, and the departments are sometimes still pretty dated. And I think this is something that, from a completely bipartisan level, people want to know, people want to hear, and you've been getting asked it a lot. What is police reform looking like to you?
So police reform is something I'm behind. I like it. I like the idea of police reform. When somebody tells me their ultimate goal is to make it so that law enforcement just handles law enforcement and we let social services handle mental illness, I would love to see that. Now, we don't live in a perfect world, in a perfect society. So that can't happen. When law enforcement is called out to a scene, they don't get to make the choice and say, oh, I got to leave. They're bound by their oath to do something to make the situation right. So to me, police reform is, again, working with other agencies. I want to pull Parkland Mental Health further into the department. Right now, they kind of provide a little bit of services. They provide medical, and they operate the hospitals that we take our inmates to. But I want to pull them in in a training capacity. I also want to pull them in and have full-time positions in the jail that their sole focus is mental health of officers and inmates. So I want to bring those in, and I use mental health as the example because it's the easiest one right now. Everybody's talking about it, but there are other things. CPS is another one that needs to have some reform in it. But so we take mental illness. To me, reform is opening the doors up and changing of some of our policies. I don't need to make an officer an expert on mental illness, but I need to make them an expert on how to spot it so that they can differentiate between a combative subject and someone that is in a depressive or manic state. Because the tactics are different. If somebody's combative, I can go hands-on, I can pull out a baton, I can use one level of force above theirs. If they're in a manic state, nothing I do will help that. And what it'll end up happening is I'm going to give commands. They could be in a manic state, or they could be a paranoid schizophrenic having a mental break where they're hearing voices, having auditory and visual hallucinations. So I have to be able to differentiate that. If they're having auditory hallucination, not listening to my commands, how do I expect them to listen to it? And
right.
Law enforcement is only trained on how to use force. That's when we need that mental illness side. So reform will be a higher level of training. And I want to start with 4 squads where I have a mental illness professional that rolls out with 2 officers when they're called. So I teach all of my officers how to spot mental illness. And then they can call for a mental illness squad, which a mental illness professional will show up with 2 officers that are more in-depth trained. That way, it doesn't turn out to be a SWAT call out. It's a mental health call out. So I don't want to see officers pulled completely out of it, but I want to stop holding them responsible for being experts in it. I want to bring the experts into the department. Part of the problem I have now with the defund movement is they're holding officers responsible for something that is so far out of the scope of their duty, it's not even funny. I don't expect a doctor to understand how to be a law enforcement officer. Why do they expect law enforcement officers to be doctors? So to me, it's marrying the 2 fields and working together. Again, meet in the middle and work for reform versus blaming it all on one side.
So this is a good question. And my first comment before I read this is, well, it sounds like you need to add somebody, which means you're going to have to add funding, which I'm an advocate for, because there's no way to fix a problem it's like saying your house is falling apart. We're going to stop spending money on it and expect it to all of a sudden miraculously heal itself. So this person said, what about, so you have the idea of having these special squads with mental health teams. What do you think about having at least one person who's qualified to do the police side and deal with mental illness? So somebody that maybe has a higher paying job that is also a psychologist degree and also trained as a police officer.
Well, that's that's where I was saying that special squad of 2 officers and a mental health professional. So that mental health professional will be paid by Parkland. I'm asking them to loan that person to my department.
Okay.
Let that be their job. Now, that squad of 2 officers will go with that professional and get highly trained and integrate with them so that they can both bring each other up to that same level on training. But what I'm asking to do isn't going to increase my budget. I'm going to ask Parkland to loan me one of their doctors.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to propose it just like that. Hey, you want to make help? Loan me one of your doctors and let him ride out with this. I will guarantee you his safety because I'm going to put him with 2 officers. But that's the thing. It's going to take help from both because I can't add a $100,000 or a 6-figure salary to my budget just on a whim.
Right.
I'm going to ask them to loan me a doctor and help train my officers. And so that kind of is where we're going to go. It's just in the beginning, it's going to be baby steps. I will be bringing one of them with me. Now, those 4 squads will end up being trained at that higher level over time, but you can't expect it to happen overnight.
Exactly. So, yeah. I think on a national level, it'd be fascinating to actually say, okay, let's actually add a whole different, almost a college degree. And you don't have to start when you're 18 years old, obviously, but a college degree or a continuing education for somebody that is that person always, and they get hired by police departments all over the country, and it's part of a national budget that gets broken down state budget that's actually requested by the federal government or enacted by that. I think that'd be fascinating. But you said a key word, and this is what when I have these discussions with people that are defund the police or abolish the police or all these things they expect change. I feel like people have this video game mentality that if you have you have the coins or the money, you can literally plug it in the system and make initial change. You buy like a sword or you buy a higher end gun and your soldiers got more energy, more trained, and that's the way it is. That's not real life. It's going to take 6 months, a year and a half. This is not an overnight process. And I think that that's key for people to remember that throughout everything that's going on in the world with a lot of police and sheriff's deputies being yelled at, and being brought down to their knees as humans, essentially, it's not going to help them all of a sudden start being better at what they need to do in order to make the world a better place. And that's the one thing that I always try to get out there. It's my thought. So we're almost wrapped up. I'm going to look for a couple more questions, but what is your thoughts generally on the way? And this is probably the most political question we'll have on the way police are being treated across the country, and what your recommendation to the everyday human is to them. Your thoughts.
So my recommendation to the everyday human: don't buy into the politics. Right now, police are the target. We are. We thought we had it bad in around 2010, 2012, but we had no idea what was coming. So right now, law enforcement is the most hated entity in the world. I'm running for the most hated office in the world, even above the office of president, because we make a great target. So don't buy into the hype. If you want to actually make change, look at the people that are responsible. A great question on here is,
where was it?
Just scrolled up, but somebody was asking, so that they were talking about the team that I'm looking at. Say we have a mentally ill suspect who's also an MMA fighter. How would we handle that? Well, those are the things that officers are thrown into every day. You have to look at the things that the officers do and what happens, and you have to take into account that these officers are having to make a split-second decision. Now, even that question alone, offhand, I would say the officers would initially try to make contact because my first priority is to make sure life safety is there. But there's so many variables that throw into it. Is he being aggressive towards the officers? Did the officers try physical restraint first? It's not working. Did they try a taser and it worked, or did not work and they have to go further? There's so many variables that have to play into it. So, to answer that question, my officers would handle it first with the mental health professional there, and those officers are trained in mental health techniques, which would allow for them to use auditory commands that are more suited for the need, or verbal commands, or physical. So they will work with the mental health at the same time. Now, when looking at a situation, though, understand those officers have a split second to make that decision, and we have 6 months to go back and just tear it apart. So we have to really start holding people accountable. Is it the officer's fault that a suspect was high on, we'll say, cocaine? Because I had this call. A suspect was high on cocaine. The officer knew something was wrong when he pulled him over. So he arrested him for the arrest warrants that he had. He put him in handcuffs. He put him in the back of the car. There was no physical assault. There was no verbal anything. The guy was completely compliant. But the moment he shut the back door and walked over to the suspect's car to start the paperwork to file for a tow truck, the suspect died in the back seat. He had OD'd on cocaine, and the officer didn't know it. There was nothing the officer could have done. So is it the officer's fault that that guy died in custody? Because he was handcuffed in the backseat of the squad car. And the medical report comes out, and this individual had OD'd hours earlier, and his body was being kept alive by the cocaine. There was absolutely nothing that could be done. But if that was to happen now, instead of 4 years ago, that officer would be run out on a media frenzy.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to stop doing. We will find bad cops. We will. And we will prosecute them. But we have to stop persecuting them for mistakes that they had no control over, or a suspect that chose to point a gun at officers and officers had to pull the trigger, that a suspect ran at officers with a knife and they had to kill him. We have to start allowing officers to go home safe. We will hold the ones that are bad accountable, but we have to look at the totality of the situation. We got to stop doing this trial by media before all of the facts come out. If we don't have all the facts, we can't make a decision.
Dallas was an example of that a couple of years ago with the woman that claimed that the late night pullover. I know you know what I'm talking about. The late night pullover where she said that he accosted her and all that stuff, and then he was just maligned. His name was out in the media, and then 2 months later, and Sean King even wrote an article or even did a post about him and all that stuff. 2 months later, the cam footage came out, and it was like, yep, did everything by the book. And it was too late in the court of public opinion in terms of he was already too hated. He already had all the issues that came with it. And we just don't know how to take a step and pause at this point. Just wait for the evidence to come through. Which gives, before I ask this question, because part of it, you said it as well, is the people are so afraid that police don't snitch on the bad police officers. Is that, what kind of programs are in place that you've seen, or what kind of programs would you make sure are in place when you're sheriff?
So, and I can't speak for all officers. I can't. There are going to be bad apples. There will be. There's bad officers out there, and I wholeheartedly agree. We need to go after them and hold them to a higher standard. All I can speak for is what I will do. I will have a self-contained internal affairs department, which means they will be set aside from the rest of the department so that the friends and the work relationships don't interfere. I will have an active internal affairs unit, and my criminal investigation department will be set aside as well to look for the criminal aspect. I can't say that we're going to be perfect. What I can say is I have personally taken officers into the interview room for my own department. I took a jailer from his duty assignment into the interview room. When the interview concluded, I stripped him of his uniform, put him in handcuffs myself, and walked him into intake and arrested him myself. If an officer is wrong under me, they will be arrested. But if they're right, I will go to grand jury and I will go to court with them and defend them. That's where we need to get. So my department, if you're right, I will defend you wholeheartedly and back everything you have. But if you're wrong, I will arrest you myself. I can't say we're going to be perfect and there won't be a bad apple, but we will persecute those individuals. And we need to make it clear. Those officers on the street need to know, I got your back if you're right. If you're doing your job and you're legit, I've got your back.
It cause and effect. And you look at, like, in you look at what happened with George Floyd, and there's a lot of different levels. It's a tragedy. There's also a drug overdose. There's a million different things that happened wrong, and Derek Chauvin did not, properly do his duties. At the same time, you look at somebody like him, and he's had over 10 offenses. So how does that, and not in your police department, but as a question, how does that happen on any police department in the country? Why is that happening where somebody can have 10 either discrimination offenses and still be on a force, whether it's he wasn't the sheriff's office, he was the police department, but regardless, how could somebody like that still be on the force?
That's why my internal affairs will be set aside from the department. A lot of what we get on that is, well, he's a good guy. He's been around for a while and we got to stop it. So, or were they 10 confirmed offenses or 10 allegations? A lot of times what we run into is you've had 10 allegations, you were never found guilty. Well, in my personal opinion, 5 allegations is a lot. 10, even though you were never found guilty, that just means you're good at getting away with it.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yes. And so that mentality needs to be brought in. I did 17 years in law enforcement. I was never once sent to internal affairs. I did go twice to testify for other cases, but I was never complained on. And we did crazy stuff. I mean, I was kicking doors and working on federal task forces for 8 years. So I didn't just sit at a desk. We were on the street. But if you handle your job and you do it correctly, you don't get complained on. And that's the push. We need to look at officers and go, you know what? You've had 10 allegations. I can't prove any of them, but something's not right. You can leave or I can fire you. What do you want to do? You're not going to work under me. And that's kind of the mentality law enforcement have. We have to be perfect. Sadly, we have to be perfect. And so we have to strive for perfection.
Yeah.
What I would look at is his department, though. So he had 10 allegations, but what did his department do? After that second allegation or third allegation, was he given any additional training? Was he sent to any classes? Was he given anger management? Was he sent to community policing classes? What steps were taken to counteract the behavior they saw coming? And so that's where I hold the department liable, not him. Did you try to correct the problem before it became a problem? And so that's the mentality that I'll be bringing. You get 3 allegations under me, I'm going to start looking at your supervisors and go, what are you doing to correct the problem? What schools are you sending them to? Where are we doing? But as law enforcement, we have to start making that change in that direction.
That's smart. This is probably going to be our last question because we actually had a gentleman, Kevin McNeil, former police officer. He was in a shootout. He had a lot of PTSD-ish from that, but he's now a trauma expert, counselor, et cetera, just because of his own life and on top of it, because he saw some issues. So I think right now, more than ever, obviously, we're seeing what police officers go through on a daily basis. So what's your opinion? We've got, I think, over 100 nationwide officers have committed suicide this year. Police officers are clearly you just can't imagine a human getting yelled at in their face for hours and hours on end and not to have some kind of PTSD. What is there programs in place that the general public don't know about? And is there something that you would do specifically for the sheriff deputies that work under you?
Yes. And this is something that's going to come up a lot. A individual, Calderon, he went through the academy with me. He was with me my entire career. And I had to call his wife and tell her that he took his own life. I still struggle with that to this day. So yes, right now there's nothing in the department. In fact, when Calderon was reaching out for help, the administration said, go back to SWAT or you're fired. They wouldn't let him take off time to go get counseling. And when he did ultimately take his life, the sitting sheriff would not allow me to find him and stop it. They told everybody to stand down, that suicide's a coward's way out. So dealing with PTSS, PTSI is something that will be the forefront of it. The program that I'm going to institute, because our department has absolutely nothing for officers, the program I will institute is going to be a peer-run program. There's a group out of Oklahoma that does it. The data that is collected and any counseling will be kept completely away from my administration. That information cannot be used against the officers. What we found is other agencies have done that. Officers would go into these programs, that agency would get a hold of the information and use it to fire them. And so officers lost trust in the program. They stopped going. So it will be a self-contained, peer-run program that is made available to everybody. On top of that, TCOL, which is the licensing board, has crisis intervention training, has PTSS training. Those will be mandatory throughout the officers' continuing education for their career under me. There will be a heavy push for getting officers the help they need. And it's a twofold. We get a twofold return on that. For one, I have better mental health of my officers. I don't ever want to have to attend an officer's funeral where he took his own life. That I never want to do that again. But on the other side of that, I know what PTS does. I don't want an officer walking around on the street about to explode. I don't want the call that he goes to. That's what sets him off. And so it'll be twofold. It'll be a better level of care for the community, and it will protect my officers' mental health. And so we will be heavily involved in PTSS, PTSI training, and counseling.
I like that. Well, unless there's any other questions you want to answer on the side, I think we've really covered the core meat. We're a little over on time because you are just, a wealth of knowledge. And I think a lot of people appreciate it. And some people I think are moving to Dallas if you win, which is awesome. Nicole said that. Any final words? I know that we got the election coming up, the importance of voting or anything like that. Last thing you want to leave with the public.
So elections coming up, I have to do the political spiel. So
go for it. Get it.
Everything under me is PRDA, the number 4 sheriff. So Prda 4 sheriff on all social media. That is my email address. Just add at Gmail. It is myself or my wife that answers my social media and my email. She has complete control over my schedule now, so she handles setting up appointments. Please reach out if you have questions. I answer all of them. I don't have a staff that does it. We are in the last 30 days of the election, so we are doing a big push right now for fundraising. We are trying to get signs at all 460 locations for voting. So we are doing that big push. It's on all social media and on my website, Prda 4 Sheriff. Please, if you want to see me in office, I need you to donate. I hate asking for money, but this isn't something that can be done. I need you to like, share every post on social media, and I need you to donate and then bring 10 friends to vote. This is going to be a monumental election with what's going on in the presidential race. So we need everybody to show up and anybody that supports me to go all in.
What I really like is that you at not one time, I think there's one small comment you made about what the sheriff's department is doing now that you want change. I like that you don't attack what's going on, even though you, I'm sure, have an opinion on what that is. PRDAforSheriff.com, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go throw that up on the screen one more time. And again, this is a little bit more of a political show than change makers is supposed to be, but ultimately police are in the forefront right now. Sheriff department's forefront. And ultimately with Be the Change, our concept in order to creating change right now is big on taking care of our police officers. Because if that happens, then they can treat the civilian citizens in a better way. And it's important across the board. And his message, Chad's message, resonated really well with me right when we talked. So I would love for you guys to share this out there, share this video, and share just the positive. When you share it, actually make a note, like actually say something on it. People are more adept to watch it if you say that. So when you share it, say, watch Chad and Anthony talk on Be the Change today. It shows how policing should be done, or gives information on that. Share that with some information, which will cause people to watch it. And if you do know somebody in the Dallas County area that's voting, this year, it's not a straight ballot vote, meaning you can't vote straight down the list. So there is going to be some Democrats that are going to be able to look at both parties instead of just do the straight Democrat pick. Chad isn't about Republican or Democrat. It's literally about proper policing in this day and age. So if you've got friends that are on either side of the line, you are from Dallas County, tell them about Chad, tell them about the mission, share this video with them. And get that message out there. Chad, thank you very much. Stay backstage for me if that's all right. And I will be back in like 2 minutes. Is that cool?
That's fine. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chad. I'm going to pull you back. Excellent. Again, that was Chad Prda, candidate for Dallas County Sheriff. I want to thank him for being on. We've got a back the blue on the bottom there. I love it. Again, in just about less than 30 minutes, we are going to be having our first Patreon meeting for any of our supporters. For anybody who wants to donate to Chad, do it. Go for it. Get it. Also, for Patreon, we have levels all the way from $5 to $1,000 if you want to be an advertiser on any of our shows. That includes Truth Will Set You Free, which sometimes gets 25,000 plus views on all of our channels, as well as make sure the way that you can help me without spending any money is actually follow our podcast, which is at #BeTheChange.com/podcast. We've got Changemakers, Truth Will Set You Free. Sum of All Parts with Cash is coming up as well. So the more subscribers we have on there, the better for advertising. All it is these shows transcribed. So if you ever miss it, you can watch it on any of the major podcasting platforms. Also, definitely need to increase our viewership on our YouTube page. Even if you don't actually, even if you watch it on Facebook, YouTube does tend to have a higher quality. I'm not going to lie. Just going to throw that out there. So go ahead and follow all the things that you can. And again, tonight, any level of Patreon in 25 minutes on a Zoom call, we'll be able to talk with me, a Q&A session, etc. It'll be fun. We'll talk about whatever you guys want. And then starting next month, it'll be for the higher tiers, which are like $25. Either way, we thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you again to Chad Prda for being on the show. Deirdre, Patreon is giving me a hard time trying to add you. I don't know why. Patreon.com/BeTheChangeUSA. Love you, Deirdre. Love all you guys for being here. Remember, you can be the change you wish to see in the world. Take action. Don't just create awareness. Thank you guys very much. And remember to subscribe, like, etc. You know all the things.